This is the Spurscast with your host, Paul Garcia.
Welcome back to another episode of the Spurscast. On today's episode, I'll be going solo. In this episode, I will be discussing the Spurs through 43 games, some trade rumors surrounding Jakob Poeltl, and Tre Jones' increased scoring with Devin Vassell out due to injury. What's up, everyone? Let's go ahead and get started right into this episode of the Spurscast. Okay, so first, let's go and revisit the last three games for the team. The Spurs, unfortunately, since I last recorded last week with Colin Reed, are 0-3 last games. So let's go back to Monday this past week, and I am recording this on a Saturday because that's like the only day that the Spurs are off. They have like a million games this week. So anyway, going back to Monday, the Spurs are faced with a tough schedule. They have to play Memphis twice and then Golden State in these last three games. So on Monday, they lose to the Grizzlies by 8 points. Memphis led pretty early in this one. The game goes down to crunch time, gets very close, but Memphis ends up holding on to the lead. Spur of the game for this one was Tre Jones. He had a great night for San Antonio. We do want to note injury-wise that there was no Ja Morant for Memphis and no Keldon Johnson for San Antonio in this game. Then on Wednesday, the Spurs played the Grizzlies again in Memphis as well. They lose by 6 points this time, so they lose by even less amount of points. They actually trailed pretty early by 19 points, but they got back into the game. They got it down to crunch time, and they end up losing, though Memphis holds on for the 6-point win. Again, spur of the game, another great night for Tre Jones. We do want to note that Ja Morant was back from injury for this one, and so was Keldon Johnson for San Antonio. And then the most recent game, which is another loss for the Spurs, was the big one where the Spurs set an NBA new fan attendance record with 68,323 tickets sold and fans in attendance. And so the Spurs and Warriors were in the Alamo Dome. Big night. I did a video on that night and how it went. And unfortunately for the Spurs, though, on the court, they ended up losing by 31. They got blown out again by the Warriors. That's now twice this season they've been blown out by the Golden State Warriors. It was close for about 18 minutes, and then the Warriors just kind of blew the lead open, and they got it all the way up to 39. They ended up winning. If we wanted to say there was a spur of the game, it was, again, Tre Jones had a good night for San Antonio despite the team getting blown out there by the Warriors. So all in all, again, 3 games, very tough schedule for the Spurs. They were underdogs in all 3 games going in, and so they ended up, losing those 3 games. So they ended up going 0-3 in these last 3 games. So where are the Spurs now through 43 games? They are 27th on offense. It's still the same from when I last spoke a week ago. They're still 30th on defense. We saw that they gave up 144 to the Warriors, so it's just going to hurt their numbers even more on defense. And then they're also 30th in net rating. Overall, their record, they're 13-30, 14th out west still, so not as bad as the Rockets. And then they have the 4th worst record in the league, which allows a 13% chance at the overall number 1 pick if the season ended today. But we know that there's multiple months left in the season. All right, let's go and jump into our second topic here. And this is, let's see here. This is another trade rumor surrounding Jakob Poeltl. So there's like Colin and I mentioned last week, there's going to be a lot of trade rumors surrounding Jakob Poeltl and maybe Josh Richardson, Doug McDermott, these Spurs veterans, because we know that the trade deadline now is approaching. It's less than a month away now that I am recording this on January 14th. I believe it's on the 9th of February or 7th or 9th of February. Anyway, let's go ahead and get through this rumor here for Jakob Poeltl. So before the Spurs and Warriors game tipped off in San Antonio, the Alamo Dome, Woj was on ESPN, and I want to give a shout out to our Project Spurs writer Benjamin Bornstein. He put this in our Slack channel, this little video clip of Woj talking about teams having interest in Jakob Poeltl. So let's go through the main parts of this trade rumor per Woj. So according to Woj, by quote, he did say in this rumor, in this report on Friday, that there's a lot of interest in Poeltl from different teams. Now, to sum it up, what he said a lot of teams are going to send the Spurs significant offers that will test whether or not the Spurs say yes on moving Poeltl or no. So we know that last year, the Atlanta Hawks sent them, or not last year, in the summer, the Hawks sent them a bunch of offers for, sent a significant offer for DeJounte Murray, and it was a good enough offer where the Spurs could not turn it down, and so we saw that they ended up moving DeJounte Murray. So that's going to be the same case with Jakob Poeltl, where if the Spurs see that there's just an offer they cannot refuse, then they're probably going to say yes and move Poeltl. And the reason why is because a lot of teams, especially contenders, according to Woj, do want a size on defense to battle with like Joel Embiid, to battle against Nikola Jokic, those kind of players. So they want to have a good defensive center there on their roster. So Woj also mentioned that, again, the Spurs don't necessarily want to move Poeltl. If there's not an offer that's going to meet what their demands, well, then they're just going to hang on to Poeltl because they can actually use him for the future. They're very interested in that. So according to Woj, Poeltl right now, up until the end of the season, can sign an extension for 4 years for $58 million, but Poeltl's going to likely get way more on the market than that. So he's going to end up turning that down, according to Woj. So again, he's probably going to have to go into free agency. He's going to end up exploring free agency. Now, the reason why also the Spurs might want to keep Poeltl for the future is because in the event they get lucky in the lottery and they end up landing Victor Wembanyama out of France, well, then they would like to see Poeltl being that starting center and then Wembanyama there at the 4. So again, they would like to have Poeltl, help out Wembanyama in his first few seasons in the NBA and have them as a duo there in the front court. So when we look at Profit X and we look at some of the contract numbers, Poeltl's extension, if he were to sign that 4 years for $58 million, that would be about $15.4 million per season. But according to ProfitX.ai, Poeltl's right now, his projected salary range for this offseason is going to be $16.8 million. So again, whether that's with the Spurs or another team, he can probably get close to an offer in that $16.8 million per season range. So that makes sense why the Spurs aren't, why he's likely not going to sign that extension with the Spurs. He may re-sign with the Spurs, but probably not until free agency. And so again, Woj didn't actually say any kind of team specifically, but he did mention that a lot of contenders and playoff teams are going to be the teams throwing offers there at the Spurs for Poeltl. So again, we'll continue to see what's going to happen with Poeltl in his situation this upcoming summer when if he ends up going to free agency, or even before the summer in February if he ends up getting moved via trade. So again, that's the latest on Jakob Poeltl. And again, a significant quote there from Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN.com. And then the last topic, because this is a very short episode, because again, it's only been 3 games since I last recorded, and there really hasn't been a lot going on aside from the big game in the Alamo Dome with the Spurs and the Warriors, is the increased scoring for Tre Jones. We have seen that since Devin Vassell went down with, since the Spurs knew he was going to be out because of that left knee procedure, they have needed more scoring, and so Tre Jones is showing his, I would say, like his versatility, his adaptability to be able to do that, to where normally when Vassell and Keldon Johnson are present, the team's top 2 scorers, he's more of like that quarterback, I would say, averaging about 6 assists a game, 12 points, still getting some scoring done if he needs to. Very balanced player. But now that the Spurs are losing one of their leading scorers for a while here with Devin Vassell out due to that left knee injury, Tre Jones is showing that, yes, he can actually become more of a scorer as well if he needs to. So let's go. So what I really want to do is just kind of explore his numbers, and especially in the last 6 games is what I really noticed, because I first went through his shot profile as you can see here in the middle of the page with these initially for the season he's taken 493 shots. Then for just these last 6 games, he's taken 97. So his shot profile looks a little similar. I mean, it's not much difference. He's still attacking the paint 66% of the time. And then, in the last 6 games, 67% of the time. His mid-range jumper, it's only up by 2% more. The threes are also very similar. We see here. So, or actually, he's taking a little bit less threes in this time frame. But still, numbers are very similar in terms of percentage of shots where they're coming from for Tre Jones. So that's not the area where he's changed his game. What he's changed right now in these last 6 games is his aggressiveness and taking more shots. So let's type the numbers here. So for the season and in this last 6 games, he's averaging about 30 minutes a night. He's taken about 5 more shots, it looks like, per game in these last 6 games. So that's where we see that again. He's been more aggressive. He knows that the team needs more scoring with Devin Vassell out, and it just really Keldon Johnson being out there, and then some of their other role players that are having to score the ball. And so we see that he's really increased his shot attempts, which is of course going to help. He's making his shots, and he's an efficient player. It's going to help him increase his point production. So we've seen him go from 13.7 points per game for the season to right now in these last 6 games about 19.7, so almost a 20 point per game scorer. So that helps the Spurs because again, they lost one of their 20 point game scorers in Devin, and so now they have Keldon still scoring 20, but now Tre's basically helping him out as like that tag team there in the backcourt with Devin Vassell out due to injury. Rebounding still the same. Assists has dropped off, but just by 1. I mean, that's not bad. Again, considering that he's taking 5 more shots, his assists are still pretty much there. I mean, he's only lost 1 assist, which you would expect him to lose assists because he's not passing as much now that he has to take more shots. But he's actually keeping a high number there, 5 assists still during the stretch. Defensive numbers look very similar to where they've been at, and then actually his ball security has gotten better. He's actually averaging, they're almost the same, 1.9 turnovers to 1.8 right now. So. Again, that's Tre Jones. You also see it in his drives data, how he's been more aggressive. For the season, he drives about 11.3 times per game per the NBA's drives data, and he takes about 6 shots a game when he does drive. And so normally he's second on the team in drives per game. It's usually Keldon who's first. But in these last 6 games, he's actually averaging 14 drives a game, and that's first on the team. And then also he's taking 9 shots. So again, when he's driving the ball, he's not necessarily looking just to pass now. He's actually looking to put the ball up, put a shot up. And again, the Spurs do need that because they're a team, like I said, that is missing a lot of their scoring with Devin Vassell out, one of their top players. So I think that for Tre, it does show that he's able to, like I said, be more adaptable. If a team needs him to score the ball more for multiple games, he can do that. He's showing here, and still being very efficient with the shots that he does put up there from the floor. His normal shots, we know that he struggles with the 3 ball. That's not his shot, but the shots inside the 2-point range is where he's at, where his scoring's mainly at anyway. And he has shown that he can do that. It's also interesting because we did see earlier this week that Bobby Marks of ESPN reported that since Tre Jones has now met starter criteria by starting at 41 games, his qualifying offer to become a restricted free agent this offseason is going to boost up from about $2 million to about $5 million. So again, he's showing himself as well that he's going to be a player out there for not just the Spurs to try to re-sign, but other teams that are going to have interest in a player who can be a backup point guard, but also if a star point guard gets hurt, they can have Tre run the backup point guard duties as well. So again, Tre's just having a good season again, like we've talked about all year. He's been mentioned here on the Spurscast when I've had multiple guests on. We've talked about Tre and just kind of the way that he's progressed, and even like his defensive numbers are when he's like when you look at just the Spurs players' defensive numbers, he's usually one of the top guards in the team in terms of like deflections, steals, things like that. He's always one of the top rated players there for San Antonio right now, even though they are the worst defense, 30th on defense. So that was basically it. Again, a very short episode. Not a lot going on just because of it's only been a week since I last recorded, so just 3 games. We are going to continue, like I said, we're going to probably see every week some different trade rumors, whether it's around Jakob Poeltl, Doug McDermott, Josh Richardson, because that trade deadline is getting closer. And yeah, so it's coming up in early February where we are already in mid-January. And one thing I did want to note that I did want to mention regarding the Spurs and the trade deadline is that I have this model that I created where I kind of use like just the Spurs' traditional box score numbers, and I put it together. And out of their top players right now, just when we run the numbers, it's like Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Tre Jones, Jakob Poeltl, Doug McDermott, and Josh Richardson. So again, the fact that 3 of the players that are going to likely be in trade rumors are in their top 5 or 6 is a good sign, because that means that the Spurs are showing other teams that, hey, what offers are you sending? And so they're going to be asking for a lot, I would say, just because, again, they don't have to move these players. It's something Colin and I talked about last week. They don't have to move these players, but if they needed to, well, then they can demand a pretty good offers for those 3 veteran players, Jakob, Doug McDermott, and Josh Richardson. So thanks for listening to this episode of the Spurscast. I also want to say thank you to Joe Garcia for mixing and producing this episode. From all of us at Project Spurs, stay safe and have a great day.